Silly question for you today. Do you actually know someone who won at the blame game? Have you ever met anybody in the world who, when casting blame or throwing shade, actually won as a result of blaming somebody else for their failure, for a shortcoming, for a problem that they have? By blaming somebody else, they actually got away with it or got better. Do you know anybody? Have you ever met anybody? Has it ever happened for you? Seriously, if it has, leave it in the comments below. I'd love to know how you win at the blame game. Welcome to Leading Leaders Podcast. 5-minute videos, 5 days a week. I'm J Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast, and there are a whole lot of people who feel like the only way they can get away with something is to blame somebody else for it. See, here's the problem. Blame and accountability, they don't go together very well. Think about that for just a second. Blame or accountability. Do you blame somebody else for the failures in your life, or blame somebody else for the lack of opportunity? Do you blame somebody else for the problems that you're facing? Now, sure, there are issues that we all face in life. There are issues that we all have to cope with that we have no control over. Circumstances, situations, and events in our life, incidences that we didn't plan for, that nobody knew was coming, that no one knew that 2020 was going to look like 2020 has looked. Well, I hope no one knew. I hope no one planned for 2020 to be like it has been. There are some conspiracy theorists who truly believe that the pandemic was planned and the riots were planned and the unrest in the streets were planned, and they were just looking for a little opportunity. But I hope that's not true. Here's what I do know is true, though. Incidences, like all of 2020 so far, happen to everybody every single day. A change in government structure changes an entire society. It happens in third world countries. It happens all over Africa. It happens in cities and states all the time, that a new political leader has a new idea, a new way of doing things. A new CEO has a different set of values than the last CEO. What they focused on strategically meant money went to certain project and people were assigned to certain tasks. And then the new CEO comes in and they don't see those pet projects as nearly as important. And so they move the funding and they move the people, or they lay them all off. And now you find yourself a victim of these circumstances. And in those situations, it's really easy to blame and go, look, it's the new politician. It's the fault of the new CEO. I had nothing to do with it. I didn't cause this. It's not my problem. It's not my fault. I'm just dealing with the fallout. And there's a lot of truth to that. Every single day, leaders are faced with decisions that have to be made that impact a whole lot more than just themselves. There are a whole lot of people who are impacted by almost every decision that you make. It's a big deal. But there's also this very fine line of saying the E plus R equals O equation. The event plus how you respond to it equals your outcome. When we reach the plus sign is where individual responsibility kicks in. And that's when we realize that the event that was beyond our control, the change in the tax law, the change in the administrative law, the change in the payroll law, the change in the property lines law, the change in property values laws, the change in the new policy by the new CEO or the new HR person, all of those changes, they fall into the left side of the plus sign. They fall into the event. A death in the family, a car accident, a drunk driver runs through a stoplight, hits your car. You can't prevent every event. But on the plus side of that event is the R. That's the response. And that is where your individual responsibility kicks in. That's where your ability to make decisions for yourself kicks in. How you will choose your next action, your next decision, your next emotion. How you will choose your attitude after the event has occurred that you can do nothing about. And that is a better predictor of your outcome than anything else in the world. See, with a lot of social structures and a lot of cultural arguments going on today, right now, and even in the United States, there's a lot of argument about, well, It's the government's problem, so the government should fix it. It's the government's cause, so the government should have the response. And if the individual gives up the right to respond to an event, to a crisis, to an incident, then they give up the ability to correct it for themselves, but they also give up the right to argue about the outcome. Sure, events are going to happen that we have no control over. How we respond to them in the voting booth, how we respond to them in protecting our families, how we respond to them in where we work, how we respond to them in the way that we speak and act as a result of the change of events. That's our choice. That's our decision. The individual makes that decision. And the minute we give up the individual responsibility, the minute we surrender the responsibility for our thoughts, our actions, our behaviors, our deeds, is the minute that we give up the right to choose them. If we don't take responsibility for how we respond in an event, then we will lose the right to make that choice. I'm J Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast for Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day. Subscribe now for our extensive video library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom.